Hello, friends. Precious D here. Before we begin today's episode, I just wanted to issue a trigger warning. The topic of sexual assault comes up in this episode, so if that is a problem for you, you can just skip it or at least be aware so you know that it's coming. Thank you. And now, Monster Movie Fun Time Go.
1,
2,
3,
4.
Monster Movie.
Fun time, go! Monster movie.
Fun time go. Monster.
Movie.
Fun time.
Go!
Monster Movie. Fun time go.
With Precious D and Honey Bee.
Fun time, go!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. I am your host, Precious D.
And I am your host, Honey Bee.
Honey Bee, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Konga. Beer, 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 beer. I just want to start off by saying that I'm really disappointed that Konga was not a lady.
Yeah, it seems like a female name. but
Yeah,
it's
I was
not.
like, oh, hell yeah, Lady Kong. No.
No. Now there, at some point we will get to a movie called Queen Kong that
Oh.
I have not been able to finish because it is not good. But
Oh,
yeah,
no.
It's meant to be a comedy, like a parody of King Kong, and it's just not as funny as they think it is. But yeah, they should have maybe called it Congo. Well, but that would sound like it's about a country if they called it Congo or an area. But the poster says, not since King Kong has the screen exploded with such mighty fury and spectacle. So they're not trying to hide the fact that they're ripping off King Kong.
Yeah.
So it's from 1961. It's in color, 90 minutes. The director is John Lemont, or
Oh.
Lamont, I guess.
Jean Lemon.
It stars Michael Goff as the biggest dick in the world, Dr. Charles Decker. Our listeners would most likely have seen Mr. Goff as Alfred in the Batman movies from 1989 to 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, he is in all four of the films from that era. 3 different Batmen, but 1 Alfred through that period. I didn't recognize him. I didn't realize that until just today when I was checking out what else he was in. Margot Johns plays Margaret, and George Pastel plays Professor Tagore. Oh, I wrote his name down because we're going to get to the racism factor in a minute. The budget is $500,000. I don't know what the box office was. The featured monster is Dr. Charles Decker.
Yeah. Yes, he is. Why are all the men in these movies just so skeevy?
He is the worst, I think, that we've seen so far.
Oh, God.
The monster's size is variable. I'm not exactly sure how big he ends up being at the end. 50 feet, 100 feet. Bigger than Kong, I think. It's hard to tell, though.
Yeah.
The death count is only 6, though, as far as I could tell.
Oh.
And no Wilhelm screams. Under the racism factor, I just wrote question mark.
Yeah.
The thing is, we don't see a lot of non-white people except sort of one guy, but they are spoken about.
Yeah.
And the doctor makes a point, as much of an asshole as he is, he makes a point of telling us that they know a lot. They're friendly, they know a lot, had great wisdom, knew more than him, and even suggests that they're just as civilized. There's a scene in the beginning when somebody asks him, isn't it great to be back in civilization? And or he says something about your so-called civilization. He's implying that societies or tribes or whatever that are often labeled primitive are just as civilized and valid in their own way as our more technologically advanced society.
Yeah. He also makes it a point to say that he wouldn't have gotten home without them.
Yes. So even though we don't actually see them, they are presented in a positive light. He, however, is not. We'll get to him in a minute. Before I forget, though, I want to say Like our previous film, Gorgo, this one also had a Charlton comic book series that ran for 23 issues. And like the Gorgo book, it changed its title to something else, to Fantastic Giants, with the 24th issue, and then was promptly canceled.
Wow.
So I think that was probably right at the same time. Those were being published concurrently, I think. And it later had a 3-issue miniseries. There was also a novelization. And there is a remake from 2020 called Konga TNT.
Yeah, I saw that when I was looking for the movie. I was like, what? How do I not know about this?
I've only watched a few minutes of it, and it is bad.
Really?
We'll get to it eventually, but Wikipedia claims that it is based on the comic book series rather than being a remake of the movie. So I don't know what to make of that.
Huh.
But it features a ape that starts off normal size and gets bigger. For those of you who haven't actually seen the movie yet, that's what happens.
Is this in the same universe as King Kong, or this is like a completely, totally different thing?
No, it's totally different. It's its own thing. It's not the same company or anything. Nobody in the movie makes any reference to King Kong.
Yeah.
Because if we were walking down the street and saw a giant gorilla, I think we'd go, "Holy shit, it's King Kong."
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody would have to go, "Actually, that's Konga." But nobody says that. But then again, his giant form is not on screen really long enough for anybody to say much of anything.
Yeah.
This movie is strange in that we've seen a lot of scientists in the movies we've been watching. Some of them are misguided. Some of them make mistakes. Some of them are heroes. Some of them are responsible for what's happened, but then they try to fix it. This is the first just straight up evil mad scientist that we have come across in our movies that we're watching.
Yeah, this guy is just a douche canoe. Dr. Douche Canoe.
Yeah, and I think he might be the most straight up evil character in general that we've run into.
So far, yeah.
What makes it so weird is that he's the protagonist. He's not the villain that the main character is fighting against, like the guy in Dinosaurus, Hacker. Hacker was a jerk, but I think even he wasn't quite as big of a jerk as this guy.
Yeah, totally.
Like in Tarantula, the guy that accidentally created a giant tarantula monster was trying to solve world hunger.
Right.
He had good intentions. He just made some bad choices.
Yeah, and I'm really confused as to what this guy thinks this research, what he's going to do.
Right.
With it.
He's just doing research for its own sake and for the glory of it, and because he can, with no clear goal in mind.
Right.
It's not at all clear what he wants to do, and his research is all over the place.
Whack.
I guess let's get into the plot, and we'll deal with his various degrees of bullshit as we get to them.
Go. I also wanted to say something that's super funny is that this movie is by the American International Pictures, or the AIP, Ape, LOL.
Yes, AIP is a division of MGM that distributed a number of the movies we've seen. I think they had something to do, or MGM did, with Gorgo, which may be how Charlton ended up doing comics for both of those characters. But yeah, AIP makes a lot of crap, or distributes a lot of crap.
But do they have apes in them? Well,
Apes?
This one doesn't really
Not
you know what I mean.
Not all of them, no. Also, this movie is we go from the 1950s into the 1960s, and there is just an abrupt change from last week's 1960 movie to this one. We are now just 1 year into the decade. Just full-blown 60s is happening here with the opening credits. It's all of these rectangles and squares in bright colors and the music and everything just looks so much like so many other 60s movies that I've seen. Not that aren't even this kind of movie. They could be anything, but they have those kind of credits. It could be a spy movie or a comedy or anything. It's just aggressively 1960s, just right out of the gate. And then after these credits, we see an airplane flying over the jungle, and then a really bad special effect as it is meant to be flying into a tree and instantly explodes in a ball of flame.
Yeah, it just basically spontaneously combusts.
Yeah. It's just such a bad effect. And that's not how a plane crashes into the trees. You know, it's going to take out some trees as it goes down, and maybe it'll catch on fire when it hits the ground. It's not going to just burst into a fireball like that. And then we see a news report, an anchorman guy. He's wrapping up his first story, and then he tells us that Dr. Charles Decker, the famous English botanist, and I'm calling bullshit right away. There are no famous botanists. This is nonsense.
That's hilarious.
There's nobody who is a botanist whose disappearance is a big enough news story to make it onto the headline news. But he's telling us that this famous botanist has crashed or disappeared or whatever in Africa. And then we cut to a newspaper, extra, and the headlines and stuff of a year later, Dr. Decker has returned.
Yeah, in the first 5 minutes of this movie, we have gone through an entire year.
Yep.
It's insane. A lot happening very quickly.
Yes, and he's so famous that there are reporters waiting for him at the airport, where he apparently just gets off the plane holding a chimpanzee in his arms, who he introduces as Konga. And we find out that it was in Uganda his plane went down, and he bailed out just in time. We did not see anybody bailing out just in time. They did not have the budget for that kind of a shot. And he tells us how he was found by some distant relatives of the Bantu tribe, and they helped him. And this is where he says something about what you choose to call civilization, and that he could have gotten back earlier, but he wanted to study the insectivorous plants.
Yeah, he at first refers to it as he had to research this special situation. And all of this while he's like petting this baby monkey. Like,
yeah,
very mob boss, like petting a cat, but he's like just petting this baby monkey, talking about this special situation.
And he says he's on the verge of finding the link or making a link between plants and animals. They ask if there's any other startling discoveries. I think he says perhaps.
Yeah, he's like, maybe.
Maybe. And they ask about the pilot. Why is this just now coming up? This should have been in the newspapers already. And he says the pilot was killed. And I just feel like the way he says it, I just feel like he killed the pilot.
Yeah, I didn't actually have that thought or see that at first, but now that we're talking about it, I think you're right.
I mean, we don't really see anything like that, but it does kind of seem like a situation where either he caused the crash or he said, there's only one parachute and I'm taking it, and shoots the pilot and jumps out.
Yeah,
he's exactly the kind of guy who would have done that.
Yeah, he's very capable of that, for sure. For sure.
And they ask him if he's going to write a book, and he says that, my personal experiences are not important, but if I discover anything, if anything of its scientific importance comes out of this, then maybe I will. But we see later that he is very concerned about his personal glory, so I don't know if he's just bullshitting them.
Totally. Oh, he's just trying to make himself look like such a great guy.
Yeah.
In this, like, coming back. Like, I am a hero. It isn't about me. And it enters fucking Margaret, right?
Yes. Yeah. Next scene is him and Margaret at presumably his house. He's like, oh, it's so nice to have food and comfort and warmth and my reference books and my laboratory. And Margaret's like, hello, right here.
What about this pussy?
You haven't even mentioned that you missed me. And he's like, oh, yes, of course I did. You've been my secretary, assistant, housekeeper, confidant, and most of all, good friend, in quotes. To which she responds, calling a woman a good friend is almost an insult. The thing with them, it's they are living together. They are shacked up. It's only 1960, and they are not playing a couple of free love young hippies. They are well into their middle age. He is a professor at a university. Neither of them appear to have ever been married before. There's no clear reason why they aren't married, but they've clearly been living together, and it is certainly heavily implied that they have been having sex together. We don't ever see it, and we don't see much in the way of physical affection, but from stuff that comes up later.
Yeah, that's not because of her. That's because of him. We see that she wants that, and that she is trying to pursue that. And I want to feel so bad for Margaret at times, and then I'm like, fuck you, Margaret, at other times. So it's kind of, I don't know.
They're obviously living together, and she has been living there apparently for the year that he's been missing.
And taking care of all his shit, like all his plants and his laboratory and all of his bills and all that shit. She took care of it. Like he was in prison, but he just fallen out of a plane and everyone thought he burned to a crisp. But for whatever reason,
somehow
she knew
I felt
that
were still
he was alive. Yeah.
But she is just as bad as him in her own way, because when he starts doing bad things, he thinks he's justified in all of his nonsense. She knows it's wrong and just lets it happen anyway. So she's like, as long as you give a shit about me, you can do whatever the fuck you want. Yeah. So she's just terrible in a slightly different way from him.
Yeah. Ew.
So then she tells us that she's had the large cage built that he instructed, and he asks her if she's jealous of a chimp. And she's like, you treat him like he's of royal blood. And he's like, well, yes, he is. He is going to be the first in a line of kings. And I wrote, Kongs? But he's going to be the first link in modern evolution between plant and animal life.
I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand this study. I don't understand what he's hyped about. Like his even when I'm not sure I understand. Like, what the fuck? Who gives a shit?
No one in any of these movies understands anything about how evolution actually works, or rather the writers don't. And this whole idea of the connection between plants and animals, I mean, all life on Earth is connected. It all shares certain qualities, but this is just a bunch of nonsense. He does get snippy with her for what he perceives as mocking him. Although of course they all mock me, but you? And she's like, no, just tell me what the fuck you're talking about.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, we may as well start now. And they go to the greenhouse and he just starts tearing up all his old plants because he's brought some clippings back from Africa of the insectivorous plants.
And she's like, what the hell? Like, I've been taking care of this all year and you're just fucking it up.
Yeah. And we could have at least given the flowers to the hospital. He's like, oh no, that was generous but wasteful. We're going to turn it into mulch to grow my crazy flesh-eating plants.
Yeah, he says it. He's like, that's generous but stupid. I was like, damn.
Yeah. I did read a little bit of the comic book, and they tried to flesh out the backstory more. They actually showed some of his time in Africa, and they showed that the tribesmen he met were giants because they had been eating the seeds. And I think it actually came out before the movie. They might have been working off of the screenplay or something, because the drawing of the guy doesn't look like the guy in the comic has a beard and the actor does not. Also, in the comic, Konga is a monkey to start with. Again, not understanding how evolution works. Konga is clearly a monkey who then changes into a chimpanzee, who then changes into a gorilla, as if these are steps on an evolutionary ladder, that one leading into the other. And that is not how it works.
Yeah, when he gets bigger in this one too, I was like, he's just a different fucking monkey now.
Yeah, well, okay. So technically he is an ape. This is what I mean. Monkeys have tails. Apes do not. And in the comic book, he starts off as a monkey. He's got a tail. And then they inject him and he turns into a chimpanzee. And then as the experiment progresses, he turns into a gorilla. That is not, gorillas are not large chimpanzees. They're a different species.
Exactly.
And a monkey is not a less evolved chimpanzee. It's its own thing.
Right.
People who don't understand evolution say things like, well, if evolution's true, then why are there still monkeys? Why didn't they all evolve into humans like we did? I'm like, no, that is not how it works. That's not how any of this works.
Right.
But anyway, he tears everything up and he's going to plant his new plants he brought from Uganda, and we need to turn the heat up to 90 degrees. And they grow fast and their characteristics can be transferred. She says, what characteristics? And he says, well, they're human characteristics, which is just nonsense.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? Like what? Give me an example, please.
Yeah. Is their cell structure more like the cells of an animal than a normal plant, or what? What do you mean?
Right.
Nothing, because the writer knows nothing about science. But the witch doctor explained it all to him. So, okay. Margaret can't stand the heat, so she gets out of the greenhouse.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the greenhouse.
In the next scene, Konga is in the cage the aforementioned cage that Margot had built. And Margaret brings in tea. This is where she definitely lives there. She's still there. First thing in the morning, she's there. And the doctor is extracting juice from the leaves of the plants it's not clear how much later this is, but the plants have already started growing and he's extracting juice from them.
Did he already have the witch doctor conversation with her? Was that at night or is that the next morning?
He mentioned the witch doctor in the previous scene, and now he's talking about how the witch doctor used it. This extract on stunted animals.
Yes. To control them.
He says, don't be fooled by the word primitive as applied to witch doctors. He knew stuff. That's not the exact quote, but he's like, he knew all kinds of shit. He taught me all kinds of things.
Yeah, and it was controlling his patients and shit.
Yes.
Did he drug them?
Yeah, he mentions how well he was able to control his patients with seeds. And he's going to put the seeds in with the extract of the leaves. He's somehow going to combine the seeds, which I guess are mind control seeds, with the leaves, which are rapid growth leaves. Don't know. None of it's very clear. But he goes from being a botanist to being a guy who's doing experiments in mind control and animal growth, rapid animal growth, and species change, and incorporating plant characteristics into humans, or he's just all over the damn place.
Yeah, it's all very confusing.
And of course he's just insane about the whole thing because there's no purpose to any of this. But the mixture he's making boils over, and Tabby, the cat, licks it up.
And Tabby gets 2 to the head.
Yeah, he instantly shoots the cat because he's just got a gun laying around, as you do in England.
When you're a scientist.
Yes. But in England, where, guns are not nearly as prevalent as they are here, or as legal as they are here, he just picks up a little handgun and puts a cap in that cat. Because a few drops and yells at Margaret, a few drops would have made him swell up, and I don't have time to deal with a house cat the size of a leopard, and we'll have to bury him in the yard tonight.
Ooh. Yoisa.
Reminds me of an old Monty Python sketch.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah, I was up for 4 hours last night burying the cat. 4 hours to bury a cat? Well, he wouldn't sit still.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, wasn't he dead? No, but as we were going away for a fortnight, I figured we better deal with him now.
Wow.
Anyway.
The
The greenhouse is now full
Full of
of big ass
sea plants.
big ass carnivorous plants in the greenhouse. Big puppet plants with their
They
tongues
look like
lolling
big
out.
black peepees.
Some of them do, yeah. Some of them are sort of pitcher plants with their tongues hanging out. I don't think those kind of plants have tongues, but these ones do. And the fly traps are just randomly opening and closing their mouth like, fly
Chomp,
traps,
chomp, chomp.
which is not how those work. They don't just open and close constantly hoping to catch a fly.
Yeah.
They wait till a fly lands and then they close on them. But, they went to the trouble of building these puppets and they want to show us they work.
If you were like a kid in the 90s and you ever watched that movie Ernest Scared Stupid or whatever, some of these plants are very like those plants. And the little, it was very like, I've seen this somewhere. Where was it? Oh yeah, that's Ernest Scared Stupid. Very similar plant.
I've seen it, but I don't remember the plants in it.
I think it's not I think it's like the pods or something. Like the pods for the monster babies kind of look like the plants at the very end that are opening and closing their little mouths. Okay. Like the first plants when he walks in the room and is like throwing meat in its mouth.
Yeah, he comes in and he's feeding them big old chunks of meat and tells us that they have grown this big in a week. He clips some leaves and then goes back to the lab. Then he has prepared the extract and injects Konga with it. Konga
Which
is
I
not
have
happy.
to say, this monkey is an incredible actor.
I don't think he was acting.
Yeah,
I think he really thought he was about to get jabbed.
Yeah.
But then it seems like
totally.
he doesn't, because he kind of puts his hand behind him and probably doesn't really jab him, and the monkey calms down as soon as he's not seeing the needle. As soon as he can't see the needle anymore, he calms down. So I don't think he actually jabbed him.
Yeah,
Acting.
I don't either.
But yeah, he was not happy about what he thought was going to happen. And then they do this very weird ripple effect, like normally you would do for like a flashback.
Yeah, like in Wayne's World or something. Like
yeah, that is the thing. Yes, this is the sort of effect that Wayne's World is making fun of when they do that.
Right.
But they're not doing it for a flashback or anything. They're doing it to cover Konga growing. And it doesn't make sense to me. Well, I mean, it's because they don't have good effects. So I guess they figure if we just do a ripple, then this crossfade will look better if we do this stupid ripple effect over it. But it doesn't indicate, it's not indicating that time is passing because they're just standing next to him watching this happen.
Yeah.
So it's just really weird. Konga grows a few feet. He's still a chimpanzee at this point, but he grows a few feet. He's happy that it works, and Margaret says, "It's all clear to me now." Because I guess he didn't really explain what the fuck he was doing until this moment.
Yeah.
When she just sees the ape grow. And the next scene, we get a film presentation. He's actually doing his real job, teaching at the university. He is showing us what is meant to be footage he took while he was in Africa. And he says, incidentally, I was able to rescue my camera and some of my equipment before I bailed out of the plane. In case anybody in the audience is wondering why this makes no sense that I have this footage, I grabbed some shit just as I was jumping on the...
Which also kind of like checks out with he killed the other dude. He killed the pilot. And because not only did he make it, but all his fucking equipment made it.
Yeah. And now here I think is where we maybe need to up the racism factor a little bit, because this footage is just a bunch of random stock film of Africans from all over the place. This is not consistently one group. And I don't know enough about the Bantu speaking tribes.
Yeah.
And the Bagnadas, I don't know, whatever group he says. I think he's made up a group that they're supposed to be part of. But it just looks like random shots of a whole bunch of different tribes who don't all look like they belong to the same, culture.
Yeah.
And he's narrating this and telling us about it, and that they love dancing. And this guy was a witch doctor that had pet snakes, and his name was Masaba, which we don't ever find it. We don't need to know his name. I guess it's just to make it seem like he's really telling us about things he really experienced by mentioning the guy's name, but he doesn't affect the plot in any way.
Yeah.
So the film ends, opens the blinds, and this is when he says, incidentally, it was a stroke of luck I was able to rescue my camera and part of my equipment when I bailed out.
And then we get the fucking Sandra.
Yes. What I wrote something about plant hormones for tomorrow. Tomorrow's lesson will be plant hormones, I guess. Yeah, the bell rings, class dismissed, and we meet Sandra and Bob. Sandra is staying to help.
Yeah. When Sandra walks up to Dr. Douchebag, I was like, damn, Sandra, leave some room for Jesus. But then because she just gets really like close to him, like just really walks up. But then I realized, wait a second. Sandra is not the problem. Sandra is the kid here, which I mean, it's a college.
Yes.
It's okay.
Right.
I mean, it is college. So it's not like so.
It's not illegal, but it's inappropriate.
It's not illegal, but it is inappropriate, like insanely inappropriate.
So Sandra is a lady scientist in training.
Ooh.
Does not come off like a lady scientist at all. Everybody keeps telling us, she and everyone around her keeps telling us how interested she is in science and how important her studies are to her.
Mm-hmm.
But she just doesn't come off that way at all. The actress's performance is not grounded in what everybody's telling us about the character.
And also, I mean, I just want to know
the way she's presented.
What the hell, Sandra, is going on with Sandra's hair? And like, I just think, like, what is it? Is it a mullet, or is she pulling it the sides back to make it? I couldn't tell.
She got some kind of beehive going on?
I don't know what the fuck it is, but I can't tell if I like
60s
it. I don't know if I don't know if I hate it. I just want to know what it is. I don't know. It was I need to I was just confused. In some scenes I'm just like, did she just wake up? Like she I don't know.
She has a very 60s hairstyle going on. Sandra is very very groomed.
Oh God, I hate this.
She obviously pays a lot of attention to her appearance. I think that's part of why I'm not quite buying her as caring about her studies. Mm-hmm. But anyway, the doctor is all like, Sandra, how you've grown, and it just comes off as a total creep.
It's disgusting.
And she she mentions she's studying not only botany but chemistry and physics after his course. She's going to study chemistry and physics. So she's just really into all kinds of science. But he is totally creeping on her hard. It is not at all clear at this point whether she is oblivious or whether she's into it.
Yeah. At this point, I was like, I can't decide, if I'm like, if this is like uncomfortable or if this is warranted.
Oh, well, it's definitely uncalled for from him. Regardless of how she feels about it, he's being completely inappropriate. Plus, he's got a lady friend back home.
Yeah. Margaret. Hello, Margaret. Remember, it's me again, Margaret.
So we'll come back to Sandra later, but first he has a meeting with Dean Foster, who complains that the school is getting repercussions over his interview.
And then we kind of find out in this moment I feel like we kind of find out in this moment what his whole study is about, or what his goal is, and it's to change the shape of human beings. And I just don't understand.
Yeah, it seems like he's eventually going to use this process on humans, but for what purpose? Making us bigger doesn't help anything. It just means we need to eat more food and we'll take up more space. So that's not good. Just making humans bigger for the sake of being bigger is pointless.
Yeah. Also, the vein in the middle of his forehead during this entire scene was like freaking me the fuck out.
But apparently, whatever he said about the closer evolutionary link between plants and animals in the interview is causing some backlash. And he's like, but I'm doing this not just for me, but the greater glory of the school, which is a lie. And he mentions directed mutation. So that is part of his plan to, force evolution through directed mutation. And the dean says, "You're mad. You just need some rest after, your year in the jungle." He's talking about trailblazers are always mocked. No one will prevent me from giving my knowledge to the world. And the world doesn't want your crazy ass knowledge.
Yeah, you fucking whack job.
Later back at home, Konga is serving tea because you can train movie chimpanzees to do that kind of shit. Margaret, I keep wanting to call her Margot. The actress is Margot. The character is Margaret. Margaret is like, I told him to get the tea, and he did. This ape is both a genius and a total idiot. Or they all are.
I think this is just like the scene that's supposed to like establish that Konga knows English.
Yes, because he talks to him later as if, in very complex sentences, as if he is intended to understand.
Yeah.
I mean, we all talk to our pets, but we know that their understanding of what we're saying is very limited, and the doctor does not behave that way.
Right.
He's like, Konga, I need you to follow these very specific and complicated instructions. I need you to go up 2 streets, turn left, go 2 more streets that way, turn right. He's very... but he asks her if the figures are right, and he's growing in proportion, and he bitches about the dean not understanding, and Margaret says if you can just give him proof. He's like, well, that won't do any good. He's made up his mind, but I'll go ahead and try anyway. The new serum is ready. Please leave. I want to be alone with Konga, which was
weird. And I have to say, this particular little fellow was not as good of an actor as the last one.
You mean the one we're about to see?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he injects him with the new serum. We get the stupid effect again. And the live chimpanzee grows into a gorilla, a different species. A gorilla, but more accurately, a man in a gorilla costume.
Yeah, it's very Sesame Street, like very.
It's totally
like,
Beverly Hillbillies, just Annie Gilligan's Island, just the same shitty gorilla costume you'd see in any low-budget sitcom from this period. Just a shitty gorilla costume in which the actor makes no effort to move like an actual gorilla. He just stands up straight the whole time. He maybe slouches a little, but gorillas walk around on their fists most of the time and occasionally stand up on their hind legs. But no, there's no method acting here. Just a guy walking around in a gorilla costume.
His eyes are just like fucking hysterical.
Yeah, his very human looking eyes peering out of this expressionless gorilla mask.
Yeah. And then he hypnotizes him.
Yes. So this is where he's talking to Konga like he's a human, in that he pulls out a light and starts hypnotizing him. There's a lot of it's unclear whether hypnotism actually works at all, but it's certainly not going to work on a gorilla.
But apparently, like, part of this like seed or drug or what the fuck ever that he puts in the serum makes it where he can control. He's just drugging. I don't.
Yes, he's already established that the seeds have some kind of mind control, but then he does this weird light hypnotism thing as well.
Yeah.
And a very weird speech about We know each other much better than the world suspects. I don't know what that's meant to imply.
It's fucking weird.
But Konga seems to understand. And he talks about how you used to have many fears, now you have none because I've turned you into a fucking gorilla, and you were just a little chimpanzee who was afraid of all kinds of shit, but now you're a giant ass gorilla and you're strong. And tonight will be the first test of your obedience.
Oh, God.
And then he calls for Margot to come down. And she says, "It's astounding." And I said out loud, "Time is fleeting." Madness takes its toll.
That's weird.
And then in the next scene, the dean's chilling out in his office after hours, like you do. And Konga breaks into the dean's office and kills him.
Oh, yeesh. Yeesh, yeesh, yeesh. And this is really when you get the very dude in a suit.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh. If it wasn't apparent before, it really is. Oh.
Yeah. Then there's newspaper headlines, college dean assassinated in his office. And we cut to Scotland Yard. The police are going over their findings. His neck was broken. His clavicle was crushed. There's no sign of a weapon. All they found was black animal hairs.
There's this weird part, though, where he says the weapon must have been an arm. And I said, what?
Yeah, I guess it just meant somebody beat him to death with their bare hands or choked him with their arm, or I don't know. Yeah, he tore off his arm and tore off his own arm and beat him to death with it. But these police do not solve the case. They are useless and pointless. This is not only just a bad movie, it's sort of a badly structured movie in that we introduce these police characters who normally would be our sort of heroes who solve the problem. But they don't. They never figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe at some point when the movie's over, they go back and put pieces together, but they don't solve anything. They're just pointless. But they know at this point that the hairs found on the victim are animal hairs, but there's no reports of any beasts escaping from the zoo or circus or any other place.
Which I thought was hilarious. He's like, we checked the zoo and the circus, and it seems all those animals are there, and no one's escaped to kill anyone. So I was just like, what the fuck?
Next scene, Margot has the paper, and she knows what's up. She's like, you killed him. And he just tries to pull some bullshit. Just like, what? I didn't kill him. I was nowhere near him. And she's like, don't give me that bullshit. I know you trained your gorilla to kill him, and that is the same thing as you killing him. You can't go into court and say, what? I just hired someone to kill that guy. I didn't kill him. That doesn't work that way. Same thing. You train your animal to kill someone and then instruct him to kill him. You are responsible.
Yeah.
But he claims that the reason he did it is I had to test his obedience by making Konga kill. Why? This makes no sense.
He was like, I was going to have to do it. I had to kill somebody to prove.
Right.
And it's like, it makes no sense at all. But then also he says to her, okay, fine, we killed Dean Foster. And I was like, is he talking about her too? Like, is he trying to make her out to be like...
I think he's just acknowledging Konga and I killed him. But she is an accessory after the fact. Yeah, it's not at all clear to me why the obedience part of the experiment is important. And why is there no other way to test his obedience?
Yeah.
You could just do all the kind of standard dog training shit you do to test his obedience.
Yeah, then he's like, well, I could have gotten a prostitute, but the dean tried to get in my way. And I just like to say here that sex work is real work. So fuck you, you piece of shit.
But yeah, his excuse is I could have just picked a prostitute or I think he mentioned a couple of other potential victims, but why not take out the guy that's in my way? But no, you didn't have to kill anybody. You could have tested his obedience in another way, but your experiment in his obedience is stupid.
Yeah.
There's no good would come of this anyway. Because then what? Your goal is to then mind control humans? That's not necessary.
Yeah, but then it gets so much worse with fucking Margaret right here. I can't believe this. This pissed me off so bad.
Margaret then blackmails him into agreeing to marry her.
Oh
which
my God.
he agrees to do while still claiming, well, you're not blackmailing me, but I'll do it anyway if that's what you want.
Yeah, he's like, okay, I'm gonna prove to you that I'm like actually a good guy and I'm generous. What do you want? You can have anything you want. And this bitch says, marry me.
Well, he knows that's what she's gonna ask. She's already implied it.
Oh God.
Yes, she's tired. She's tired of everybody whispering behind her back about the fact that they're shacked up together and aren't married, which in 1960 is still kind of a big deal, and especially people of their age because they've probably been shacked up since the mid 50s. So he agrees, but he does say, "I don't have to, but I will anyway," or words to that effect.
I put right here, are you fucking kidding me, Margaret? Where is Sandra in Charles's mind right now? Because I'm like confused at this point. I'm like, okay, so what the fuck is actually happening? And then I said, wow, this is where I said, wow, I wonder if the dead pilot was as much of a piece of shit as this guy. But that was before you were like, I think he might have killed that guy.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to find out later where Sandra is in his mind because I think at this point he's already definitely made the decision that we'll find out about in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wrote, is the temperature actually really high in here? Because they are very sweaty.
Well, it's supposed to be.
Are they in the greenhouse? Are they in the greenhouse at this point? Or are they just sweating in the tea room? I think they're just in the regular house, but they are sweating a lot. And then he says we'll get married when the semester's over. But shut up until then.
Yeah, because I have no actual, I'm not actually going to marry you.
Yeah, but I need to keep you quiet until my experiment's done, so.
So that you can continue to cook my sandwiches, bitch. Show me your titties. God.
Then at the police station, they're interviewing Dean Foster's secretary.
Which I thought... I thought this actress was very good.
Oh yeah, she does a good job of being upset about the dean's death. I don't know if I can say that Dr. Decker is bad. He's very over the top, but he's giving it 100%. Mm-hmm. It's all ridiculous, but he is committing 100% to this piece of shit movie that he's in. But yeah, she gives a very good and realistic performance. It says he doesn't have any enemies, but she heard loud voices during his meeting with Dr. Decker. Mm-hmm. And then she leaves and they question Decker. And he says, he's talking about how upset she was, and he says, you know how it is with spinsters.
Well, you know those spinsters. She has absolutely nothing else except this now dead man.
Yeah, she put all her energy into being his secretary, and so now she's not upset because a person she cared about and worked with every day is dead like a normal fucking human being would be. It's just because she's a spinster and has nothing else in her life. Yeah. Dick.
Douchebag.
So they question him about the meeting, and he claims it was about insectivorous plants. And did you quarrel? No, it was nothing personal. We just had a, scientific disagreement.
A healthy debate, you will.
But we scientists are dispassionate about these things. We never train our pet gorillas to kill each other because we get so mad about it. No. And the police just wanted to clear the air. And then one of the police says that, detection of crime is a science too. So one scientist to another, do you have any theories? And he says, no, I deal in life, not death, which is just a fucking lie.
Yeah. Yep.
You're a death dealer, sir. And cut to a party at the doctor's house.
Party.
He has invited a bunch of the faculty and their wives and friends and whatever, and some turban guy.
Yeah, we get to meet a scientist that's doing the same whack-ass study that this fucking douchebag is doing.
So this is part of our I don't know where the racism factor is on this show. This actor George Pastel, he is, in real life, he's from Cyprus, which is sort of in the East or Middle East. It's kind of near Egypt. It's kind of near Syria. It's a little island nation. And in movies, he's always playing some sort of, usually a bad guy in a spy movie or something like that. And he's wearing a turban in this one. So it seems like he's meant to be some sort of an Indian or Pakistani or something other than what his actual ethnicity is. And it's not entirely clear to me if he's wearing some brown face or not, if he's, made up to be a little darker than he actually is. But he is presented as a intelligent and competent fellow scientist. Not exactly sure why they put this turban on him when it's not important to the character in any way, and it's not the actual ethnicity of the actor. The guy could have been anything.
Yeah. So they're like, let's meet around midnight.
Yes. Professor Tagore is the other scientist, and they kind of do a little verbal sparring, trying to feel each other out about, what are you working on? Well, what are you working on? Well, I think we're working on the same thing. Should we work together?
Why don't we join forces? Would you like to form an alliance with me?
And Tagore says no. Yeah. But you can come over and talk about it a little bit later.
Yeah, I don't want you to steal my thunder, but you can come and look at my shit.
And this is not quite how science works either, but sort of. There is a whole thing about you got to publish or die, and there's a little bit of you don't want people stealing your work. But then there comes a point where you do have to show people your work, and then they're going to check it. They're going to do peer review. And if it's good work, somebody's going to try to replicate it to see if it's real. Yeah. And that's a necessary part of science, is other people doing your stuff after you or with you or concurrent with you. And it's not really this sort of hiding everything from everybody until I then unleash my groundbreaking work upon the world. It's more incremental thing with lots of people working with each other and alongside each other and double checking each other. Mm-hmm. But these are mad scientists, so they're in a movie that knows nothing about anything.
And they're like, let's meet at the stroke of midnight. No homo.
Tagore does mention, knock loud when you get there because I have no servants, which also means no witnesses.
Wah, wah, bah, 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 bah. Sorry, I don't know why I went into Phantom of the Opera right
there. Funny you should mention that, because I believe our lead actor was in a version of Phantom of the Opera.
What? Who was?
The main guy.
Oh, nice. That's funny.
Yes, in 1962, the next year.
Weird.
He plays Ambrose Darcy in Phantom of the Opera. A Hammer film production. It says a loose adaptation.
Okay. A loose adaptation.
Yes, they take some liberties. I'm not sure if I've seen this version or not.
Oh, that's funny. So then we go to a scene with little Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret's little wrapping up the party. He talks about how important the party was. Because I don't like parties, but this was important. I had to, I don't know what, look good in front of the faculty or some shit. Mm-hmm. And tells her good night.
No, he doesn't tell her good night. He says, Margaret, you look tired. Go to bed. And she's like, oh, yes, you know what? You're right. I do look tired. Good night, darling. Stupid bitch. I hate these two. I really don't like these two.
No, they're terrible.
So yeah, then Dr. Douche Canoe drives to the other scientist's house in a big black van.
Right, because he's hiding a gorilla in the back of that van.
Yeah.
It's my gorilla van. My gorilla hauling van. As he enters, he leaves the door ajar so that the gorilla can come in after him. They talk about science and changing life from one form to a higher form and the godlike power of creation. And he tells Tagore he won't allow him to obliterate my work and glory. Tagore says, can you provide the necessary proof to convince the world? And he says, yes, I can and shall when the time is right. You're too late. Konga chokes him from behind. He reaches through the bookshelf. Tagore's got his back to these bookshelves that are open. It's a very 60s kind of thing. They're not up against the wall. They're sort of between the entryway and the living room. And Konga reaches through the bookshelves and chokes Dr. Tagore from behind.
Yeah, he's like, you are too late. And then just reaches through.
And Konga's like, that's my cue. Ah!
Yeah, he's like, that's me.
Remember, Konga, when we get in there, I will pontificate for a while. And then when you hear me say, you're too late, that's when I want you to grab him. Trust me, it'll play really well. And then Konga smash. He tears up the stuff, throws the table around and throws some shit around. And then the doctor calms him down and says, good job, Konga. Let's go home.
Get in the van. Let's go. Come on, boy.
In the morning, he's off to work and he's got a little lunchbox and reminds Margaret to feed Konga. And then we cut to outside of Essex College. I don't know if they mentioned it before, but we see a sign that says Essex College. And he's loading all the kids into the back of his gorilla hauling truck to take them on a field trip to study mosses and ferns. It tells them they all got to sit in the floor in the back. Not safe.
Definitely not safe.
I don't know that seatbelts were standard yet at this point in time. I don't think they were. There was a time, boys and girls, when seatbelts were not required in cars.
Yeah.
And when the car industry resisted installing them, but the public actually wanted it. Eventually it was required by law, but it was something the public actually wanted when they knew it was an option.
Yeah.
Oh, and one of the kids is named Hermione, which made me smile.
I know, and she's such a cutie patootie. I loved her. She was like her red hair and her red lipstick and her she was just adorable. The
doctor tells Sandra to sit up front with him, and Bob is like, Professor, is there enough room for me up there too? And he's like, cock blocked, boom. No, sir.
Not now, Bob.
You'll have to do your courting on your own time, Bob.
Yeah. I can't be.
And then he reminds everyone, he's like, remember everyone, this is just because we're out of class. It's still a study period. It's just being moved to the outdoors. So nobody but me try to make time with Sandra, because that's not why you're here. That's why I'm here.
Ew.
In the back of the van, everybody teases Bob about what a fucking loser he is and how much time the professor's making with his girl. And one of the other girls is like, but Sandra cares about her studies and not you, Bob, you big fucking loser. And one of the guys has brought his little transistor radio with him and turns it on to the generic instrumental pop music station that's in all of these movies.
And I feel like, did you see Sandra give a little bit of side eye right here? I did too. This is the first. I was like, oh, okay.
This is why I questioned her later. There's a lot of inconsistency with this performance because the professor is saying, Sandra, I haven't always thought of you as just a student, and I'm hoping we can carve out a little time just for ourselves this afternoon. And yeah, she looks at him sideways like she knows what's up. She understands what he means and doesn't seem upset about it.
Right.
Which is inconsistent with the way she behaves with Bob later and then ultimately towards the end of the film. It seems at this moment that she's okay with the idea.
Yeah.
God. So he stops the van. Everybody gets out. The doctor digs up a fern and shows them all the roots and explains some botany shit. And it looks like it might rain. He's like, oh, I'm sure it'll pass, but if it doesn't, we'll meet in the ranger's hut. Now, you guys all go find some plants, and I left my lunch in the truck. I'm going to go get it. So that Bob and Sandra can be alone to have a little argument. So Sandra complains basically that Bob's too clingy.
Yeah, she's like, you're smothering me.
Yeah, he's all like, but Sandra, I love you. And I'm not ready for that sort of love, and I've got to do my studies. And does he imply things about the teacher at this point? I think so.
No,
And she's like,
I don't think yet. I don't think he does yet.
at some point he does, and she's like, it's not like that. But everybody teases Bob again. They all know what's up, but Bob accuses them of having filthy minds, even though he was just thinking the same fucking thing. Then there's thunder and rain, so they all run to the Ranger's hut, and a dance party breaks out because the guy's got his little radio with him. And the doctor and Sandra enter, and he's like, well, it looks like an all-day rain, when he was just saying earlier, I'm sure it's going to pass.
Yeah.
He didn't check the weather report before they planned this excursion. So he's like, oh, there's no sense in carrying on. Let's all get back. Sandra apparently he and Sandra drove the van up closer to the hut, and she'll show you where we parked. And they all start to leave while he's getting ready to shut down, and Bob stays behind to confront the doctor.
Yeah, he has a coming to Jesus with Dr. Douchebag.
Yeah. He acts like he doesn't know what Bob means. Whatever are you talking about? And there's some yelling, and then the doctor just slaps him, and they start fighting. And the doctor is losing.
Yeah, I was like, oh my god, is Bob gonna kill him? And then I was like, I was thinking, oh my gosh, is Konga gonna show up and kill Bob, like, in the middle of what is happening here?
Not yet. But I think here we see that Bob is an asshole in his own way, because Bob doesn't know just how bad the doctor is.
Yeah.
He doesn't know anything about Konga and the murders. He just knows that he doesn't like the way the doctor looks at his not even girlfriend, his almost girlfriend, his potential girlfriend.
Well, she kind of kisses him earlier, like when they're leaving each other.
Bob?
And yeah.
Yes, but later he says this is going to be our first date, like actual date.
Oh,
so they've been hanging out at school, but they haven't actually gone on a proper date together. So it's weird. But anyway, he responds to this suspicion by trying to strangle an old man. So we know that Decker has this coming, but Bob doesn't. Bob is just overly emotional and not in control, and says things that are potentially terribly inappropriate to his teacher, and then tries to strangle him.
That's so funny.
But then he snaps out of it and lets him up and apologizes, and they agree not to talk about it.
Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Teach. Sorry about that. I was just so crazy with jealousy. Please.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Just act like this never happened.
Yeah, but then the professor is also like, don't tell anybody about this, because he knows
anybody that you whoop my ass.
He knows he had it coming.
Totally.
Well, yeah, also maybe he doesn't want anyone to know he got his ass kicked. But he's like, this doesn't make either of us look good. Better for both of us to forget it. Only he's not going to forget it. He's going to sick his gorilla on the poor boy.
Yeah. So sad.
So yeah, later Bob's at home with his family having dinner.
Which I loved his family. His little siblings.
Yeah, his sister's very much like, ooh, he's going on a date. Ooh, I have a boyfriend.
He's
ooh,
in love.
Yeah, and the younger brother's just like, ooh, girls, ick, yuck.
Cooties.
And then the father is like, you need to get your shit straight with this girl because it's interfering with your studies, you dumbass.
Yeah.
But then also tells him to, hey, just play it cool. Like the Americans say.
As the Americans say, play it cool.
Play it cool. So he's both kind of telling him, you shouldn't be so obsessed with this girl. It's not good for you. But if you want to get this girl, here's how to do it. Just play it cool. So dad's kind of all over. And mom's just, I don't know, sort of there.
Yeah, she cooked dinner, so whatever.
Yeah. She says a little, can't remember what she said, but she's just kind of mediating the whole thing. But Bob's leaving. He's not going to stay to eat. He's going on his big date and does not make it out of the driveway.
Oh yeah, this was kind of scary. This like after Konga strangles Bob and he's just dead in the driveway with his eyes open. Oof, that was scary. I was like, ooh, hell no.
Yeah, he's getting on his little Vespa scooter to go on his date because who doesn't like to be picked up on a scooter for a date?
Vespa.
I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's kind of terrible. Well, it seems cool now, but at the time, she was probably like, you don't have a car? You got this fucking... Anyway, Konga grabs him from behind and strangles him. And yeah, and the scooter's laying there with the wheels still spinning.
Mm-hmm.
And the family must have heard something because they all come running out. And it's very traumatic for them.
Yeah.
The sister holds the little brother and the mother's over and it's terrible.
It's really bad. It was scary. I was like, oh man, this is pretty brutal.
The doctor is meanwhile waiting at the van a little bit down the road for Konga to come back, and a couple of policemen pass by but do not see the man suspiciously lurking near the unmarked and windowless van. He gets Konga in the van, they drive off. And I noticed the doctor never closes his driver's side door of the van. It's like a little sliding door.
Yeah.
Every time he starts to drive off with the door still open. And then apparently will close it once he gets going. Later, the police are questioning the family. The kid had no enemies. He was popular. He had a date that night.
And they're like, oh, do you think it was like someone who liked the girl? And they're like, no, she's not like that. She's the studious type.
Yes. She doesn't look it, though. I know it's a stereotype. Hot girls can be into science, I guess, but also I don't think she's really that hot, but that's another thing. But yeah, she's not that kind of girl. So then the police later are talking. They know the 3 murders are connected because I guess the Hares, and they all went to the same school. 2 of them were professors at the school. 1 of them was a student. But there's no logical motive. The Hares are the only clue. And the lab says it belonged to a chimpanzee or related animal. Let's question everyone at the school. But we never get to see that because they don't solve anything. The next morning, Margaret's upset about this 3rd murder. Why did you kill this boy?
What are you having with your poached eggs, murder?
And again, he tries to pull this I didn't kill him bullshit. It's like, don't give me those technicalities. Yeah, the doctor acts like she's the asshole.
Yeah. And he's like, what, you want to leave me?
Yeah, I had to test Konga's obedience. But she doesn't understand the other 2 people were in his way, so she's willing to excuse those murders. But this boy didn't do anything. She doesn't know that the boy was in his way just for a different goal. And yeah, you were saying about leaving him?
Yeah, he's like, do you want to leave me? Like, he's like putting it out there like he's giving her the out, because he wants to her, obviously.
Yeah.
Like, oh, do you want to leave me? Just go. And she's like, no. I'm like, fucking Margaret.
Yeah. Yeah. She's like, I can't. I know I should, but I can't.
You're going to get yourself fucking killed, you dumb broad.
Also, if you get caught, all your work will be lost. She warns him. And the doctor's like, oh, well, it might be time to kill Konga and start over in Africa. But not for several weeks, though.
Yeah, so let's just invite Sandra over for dinner.
Yes, I'll go to Bob's funeral and invite his girlfriend Sandra over for dinner. Not his family, just his girlfriend.
Gross.
So no one will suspect that I had anything to do with it. I'll go to his funeral and invite his girlfriend over, who now is available.
Oh my God.
And Margaret agrees to this nonsense. Later, we cut to them having, I guess, after dinner tea with Sandra. Margaret and the doctor and Sandra are all there having tea, and the doctor wants to show Sandra the greenhouse. Mm-hmm. And fucking puts his hand around her waist as he's leading her out, just right in front of Margaret. Ugh. And she finally starts to catch on when she sees this. She's kind of like, huh. And Sandra's all like, oh, why would I can't get over, why would anyone want to kill him? And the doctor just tells her, you must try to forget.
Forget about that.
The fact that your boyfriend died just yesterday. What are you still doing thinking about that, you silly bitch?
Yeah.
So he shows off his puppet plants and shows one that he says he created. I bypassed normal evolution with blah, blah, blah nonsense. I turned insectivorous plants into carnivorous plants. And Sandra sticks her hand out like a dumbass to one of the plants that tries to snap at her. She almost loses her hand and then asks about why it's so hot. And he tells her, I want you to get used to it.
Oh, this.
So I can replace Margaret with you, basically.
Drag me with a spoon. Yeah, he says, these are his words. He says, I need you to assist me in every way. I need a young, fresh mind. I need more than a laboratory assistant. I'm like, I fucking puke. Like, this scene is disgusting.
Oh, she says, you already have a able assistant. Even though she's been all about being his assistant at school, banging the chalkboard erasers and whatever the hell he wants done.
Yeah.
She points out that he has an able assistant. And he's like, I tried to train her, but she's old and dumb.
Holy shit.
I need you to work with me to be with me.
Oh, no.
And so Margaret overhears all of this and goes to get Konga while the doctor starts pawing at Sandra and, he's sexually assaulting her. He's sexually assaulting her.
Yeah,
but in this very ineffective, but in this very ineffective movie way. Because, there's not going to, nothing's going to get too graphic in this movie. Even when people get killed, it's all, fairly not graphic. So he's pawing at her and trying to kiss her neck, and she's struggling and saying no. At this point we find out Sandra's not at all into this. She and seems totally surprised at the situation.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't want to, do any victim blaming or anything, but it does seem a little clueless of her that she didn't realize things were heading in this direction. Not her fault. I think it's just, badly written is all.
Yeah.
But then she starts complaining about it. It's too hot. I have to get out of here. Maybe she's just still trying to just make excuses and not jeopardize her academic career.
Yeah.
But rather than saying, I need to get out of here because I don't want you putting your gross hands all over me, she's just complaining about how hot it is. It is 90 degrees and they're in Britain and not used to that. But it just all seems...
I think she's just trying to find a safe way out and a safe out because it's like... Yeah.
At this point, he has let go of her and she... but he is between her and the door, so it's just bad. It's bad.
It's disgusting. It's so uncomfortable, and it's like, if you're gonna watch the movie, this scene is like a little rapey. So
fortunately, does not get to that point. Other things happen before it can get to that point. There's nothing okay about what's happening here. It's terrible.
Yeah.
So. Oh, Ed, she tells him that I'm not ready to work with you. I still have so much to learn. And he says, I'll be the judge of that. Don't you know I love you? No, he does not. He does not love anybody. He doesn't know what love is. He is not capable of loving. He just sees a thing that he wants and it's going to take it. Not even a person he wants, because people are just things to him, either things that are useful or things that are in his way. And so she is a thing he wants, and he's going to just try to take it. So this whole thing the thing is it's all kind of cartoony in that he's so evil, pointlessly evil on every level. Like it wasn't enough that he was doing this mad science and that he was killing his rivals.
Yeah, but now he's like,
but he also has, yes, he's also starting out as a creep, but then just straight up attempting to rape her. And then, but I guess it is all really part of the same thing of just anything he wants, he's just going to try to take it. Power, glory, knowledge, the norms of society don't matter. Even going back to he's sleeping with his housekeeper, but he won't marry her because he can't be bothered to do that. It'll be much easier to get rid of her if I'm not later when I'm done with her, if I'm not married to her. But meanwhile, Margaret knows how to hypnotize Konga and has done so and is trying to take over. Like, you will listen to me and you'll obey me now. And then she gives him a great big shot.
Gets more serum.
And she seems to think it's just going to make him stronger and give him the power to do what she needs him to do. But, of course, that's not what happens. So she says, "Go, Konga, you have your orders, obey me." And then he starts to move and then pauses so that he can grow more. And she starts screaming because, like a dumbass, she didn't realize he was going to grow. And he starts knocking shit over, turns over the table in exactly the same way he did in the other scene. Starts a fire because he knocks a Bunsen burner that's still lit off the table. And grabs Margaret and turns her into a doll.
Picks her little bitch ass up.
Yep. Then throws her into the fire. And sort of jumps up and through the ceiling, but then continues to grow through the roof of the house.
And we get to see some good destruction of the toys.
Yeah. He crashes. Yeah. He crashes through the wall and out of the house, and then he looks through the top of the greenhouse because they didn't hear any of this shit going on in the greenhouse. And he sees the doctor and Sandra through the greenhouse roof, and he's pawing at her again, the doctor. And Sandra breaks away. Konga breaks through the roof, and one of the plants grabs poor Sandra by the arm. One of the fly traps just chomps down on her arm. And at the same time, Konga grabs the doctor. And Konga, the doctor's yelling, "Konga, let me down." But Konga's not obeying anymore. All of these experiments about his obedience have failed because now that he's giant, he's not obeying anybody. And somebody must have called the fire brigade because they come.
Here they come.
Driving up with the sirens. And don't notice the giant gorilla straight away. They start unloading their hoses and stuff, and then one of them turns and looks and goes, "Wow, look!" The doctor's yelling, "Help me!" And he calls Konga a fool.
Chaos.
Konga, you fool! And like, that's not going to work. And we never find out what happens to Sandra.
Yeah, Sandra just got eaten by the plant.
Well, the plant's not big enough to eat all of her.
Well, it was pretty much, I mean, by the end of it, like, from the beginning, it just, like, got her hand, and then by the end of it, her whole arm is in there.
Yeah. They don't tell us what happens to her. But the building she is in is not on fire. So perhaps the fire brigade at some point hear her screams and go help. But at the very least, her arm is going to be terribly injured.
She's dead.
Possibly she might have to, depending on how strong these things, she might lose the arm. But maybe she just gets sort of a acidy burn from the digestive juices of the plant and some scrapes. Or
she's dead to me.
Yeah, she's dead. I just found it weird that they don't tell us what happens to her, because Konga strolls away. He doesn't stomp on the greenhouse.
Yeah.
He takes a stroll into town. And And we get some panic in the streets.
Panic, chaos.
The doctor keeps calling for help. Some people run, others kind of stand around for a little while and then run. The police get the call. It's on its way towards where? Yes, one of the police, I think it's one of the ones we saw before, gets this call and he's like, what? It's where? Yes, right away. Fantastic. There's a huge monster gorilla that's constantly growing to outlandish proportions running loose in the streets. And he's moving towards the embankment area.
The street chaos went on for about 8 minutes too long.
Yeah. The thing is that I find weird about this whole thing, though, is from the perspective of the people in the movie. In King Kong, everybody knew that by the time he goes on his rampage, Kong is a known factor. You know, they're putting on a big show. It's been publicized. It's the biggest show in town. Everybody knows at this point that this giant gorilla exists. So when he breaks out, everybody's like, oh no, the giant gorilla got loose. These people, until this moment, have no idea that such a thing exists or is even possible. Just suddenly, boom, out of nowhere, there's a giant gorilla.
Yeah.
In Godzilla, too, they know that Godzilla is heading towards the city before he gets there. And in most of these movies, they have some idea that something is coming before it gets there. But in this movie, just boom, giant gorilla. And so, yeah, the police get this call and they just believe it instantly and go. Get all the police to come to headquarters to get arms because we're in England, so they don't have guns on them already.
Yeah.
They got to come to the police station and get guns and then call the commissioner and call the war office. And then we see the police and the army moving out. Nobody has to take any time to convince anybody that this is not a joke. They all just immediately start moving out because giant gorilla.
Yeah.
And Konga just sort of stands around and then casually strolls around a bit more. He doesn't tear much up. I think it might just be no budget or can't be bothered.
A few shots of like just his legs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's like a few shots where it's like just his legs were like going across the screen, and I was like, well, that's weird.
There is one shot where he reaches over a building and there's people.
Oh yeah, and he's like scooping, like trying to scoop the people up.
Yeah, people are running. It's kind of well done until you look too close.
Yeah,
real people are running in front of the building as Konga reaches over it from behind. But if you look, you can see where the seam is, where they've pasted the two pieces of film together, or however the technique works. But it looks fairly smooth if you don't look too close.
Yeah, like I said,
but he really only
way too long. Like it was just like okay. What's
well,
next?
It goes on for. The thing is, it goes on for a long time, but nothing happens because he tears up the house that he burst out of, but then he doesn't tear up the rest of the city. He just kind of walks around.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of running and screaming. He stands around some more. People abandon their cars and start running. And then Konga stops in front of Big Ben. And then the people all stop to watch.
Yeah. They're like, look, he stopped.
Yeah. And instead of saying, here's our chance to get away, they're like, oh, well, let's wait and see what he does. Somebody yells out, where could he have come from? It's a big surprise. And Konga and the crowd just kind of stand there and stare at each other. Yeah. And then the police pull up while the doctor struggles uselessly. The army arrives and starts setting up. Konga just watches like a big dummy. The police commissioner, a general, and some dude all agree that all they can do is try to bring him down at once.
Yeah.
So they do.
Fire! Pew 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 pew.
They shoot a
They
they
look
shoot
like
a
they're all
lot of
missing.
bullets. Yeah, that's exactly right. Lots of bullets seem to miss. They're using some kind of tracer bullet, which they often do in these movies, so that we can see where the bullets are going.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real thing. Every few rounds has some kind of phosphorus or something on it that, or in it, so you can see the path of the bullet and get an idea if you're shooting where you want to shoot. And they're all missing him, even though he's, as big as a fucking house, as big as Big Ben. The bullets all seem to be going up and over his shoulder.
Yeah.
But then he starts acting as if some of the bullets are hitting him.
Right.
And then Konga throws the doctor to the ground, but
Dead.
then just stands there and gets shot at.
By like bazookas and shit.
Yeah, they do pull out a bazooka. No, the bazooka hits Big Ben, but does no damage to it. So they couldn't bother to, build models for him to tear up other than the first one. And nor is he smart enough. This is where I say that he's very smart and that he seems to understand all these instructions, but he's also a complete idiot because he just stands there and gets shot at.
Yeah.
When he could have just turned and run away and gotten, ran much faster than these cars probably. And this is probably like the easiest kaiju takedown that we've seen. Because usually there is a bunch of not only guns, but tanks and rockets and bombs that have no effect.
Yeah.
Before some fancy trick has to be pulled. And even way back in King Kong, the planes shoot him and maybe they killed him, but maybe it's the fall.
Go ahead.
That Kong, it's not clear if the planes killed Kong or the fall from the building kills Kong. Right. It might just be the planes hurt him a little bit and then he lost his grip and then the fall killed him. It's unclear. But that's our first of these kind of things. Mm-hmm. Then they get harder and harder to kill. Even the tarantula, regular bullets weren't stopping him. But yeah, regular old bullets from normal sized guns, because the bazooka misses him, seem to be what takes down Konga.
Yeah, and he's like standing by this clock tower this whole time, and I'm like, oh, here it comes. Yeah. We're gonna have a moment. No moment. Nope. There's reason for the clock tower. Nothing happens.
Well, it's there for scale. I mean, it's there because it's a recognizable landmark. It's Big Ben, but it's also there so we can see how big he is. But they can't be bothered to build a model of it. This is just an actual shot of the real Big Ben.
Yeah.
With Konga superimposed in front of it. Because they're not going to build a model for him to tear down. So, and they don't even do an effect where the bazooka shot that hits it does any damage. There's just an explosion in front of it. Nothing happens. But the music gets very dramatic as Konga falls down and the bells of Big Ben begin to chime. Konga doesn't appear to fall on anybody. Yes?
Oh, no, I was just sighing.
Oh, I thought it sounded like a gasp. And then we get the ripple, ripple, ripple as Konga turns back into a chimp.
What?
It doesn't appear to be as if he were some kind of fucking werewolf who's going to revert to his true form.
Yeah.
And he lies there dead.
It's
a chimp, but some kind of a chimpanzee doll. They haven't gotten the trained chimp to play dead. It looks like there's just some chimpanzee doll laying there next to the doctor as the crowd gathers around. And Big Ben chimes and looks down on the dead people with disdain. They just play it as if Big Ben is like, haha, take that. I stand here with resolve as my enemies lay crushed before me. But where did all this mass go? It just dissipated into the air? I mean, where it doesn't make any sense that he would grow that fast anyway to begin with, because matter doesn't come out of nowhere. He needs to take in fuel to convert into more mass over time.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen over the course of seconds. But then all that mass just dissipates and he turns back into a chimpanzee. Because this movie is terrible.
Terrible fart noise.
So that, ladies and gentlemen, is Konga. Honeybee, what do you rate Konga?
I'm gonna give Konga I guess a 2.
Yeah. I think it's a 2. I did not like it. I gotta say 1s for things like Manos, The Hands of Fate, but Konga's definitely I think it's a 2.
Yeah, I think it's a 2. 2 for sure.
I just found it so weird that our protagonist, our main character, was just such a straight up evil mad scientist. Just bizarre.
Yeah.
I did download some of the comics. I'll read them at some point. The comics, what was the name? Comics Plus? I'll post a link in the show notes. There is a website that has some public domain comics on it that you can read online or download. And both the Gorgo and the Konga and a number of other Charlton comics and a bunch of other stuff. I found a Buster Crabbe comic book. Not a Flash Gordon or Buck Rogers comic book, a Adventures of Buster Crabbe.
Wow.
Comic book that he used to have way back when. It is on this same website. Ladies and gentlemen, Buster Crabbe was a film actor who played both Flash Gordon and Buck Rogers and Tarzan on one occasion, and a bunch of other stuff. And he had his own comic book where he played himself doing the same kind of crazy shit he did in his action movie serials. All right. I guess, Honeybee, that's going to wrap it up for today.
Wrap it up. Wrap it in. All right. Yeah, Konga.
Next week's movie is Mothra.
Back to Japan, baby!
It does not appear to be streaming free anywhere right now, but it is available to buy or to rent on Vudu and I think on all the other major streaming services, platforms where you can rent and buy digital movies. Until then, I have been Precious D.
And I've been Honey Bee.
Remember to keep calm and take shelter in basements.
And please don't misuse science.
We will not see you, but you will hear us next time on Monster Movie Fun Time Go.
Yeah.
You've been listening to Monster Movie Fun Time Go. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on your podcasting platform of choice. Our theme song is by the Texacato folk rock punk featuring Lita Lopez. You can support the show, find links to our social media, and even leave us a voice message at anchor.fm/MMFTG.